The dawn of the 20th century saw the United States coming of age. Electricity, telephones, and automobiles were beginning to change life in towns both small and large. It was a new age dominated by speed and faith in the promise of machines and new technology. But in some places, the pace of life had not yet changed. In Batesville, Arkansas, the pace of life was still set by the rhythm of the steam engine pushing a riverboat upstream against the current of the White River and the clopping of a horse-drawn carriage down Main Street. Juanita often said she was lucky to start her life in the horse and buggy age. She was born of pioneer stock and lived each day with the lessons of her youth. Problems were faced squarely. Words were spoken simply and directly. Fear was not a word in her vocabulary.
Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Juanita. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Now.
Go. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did it.
Celebrating her birthday on the porch overlooking the Rio Sabinas always provided a good time for reminiscence.
I bet you. I thought so.
No,
you need to go.
That's Eleanor, and that's me, that's Henry, and that's Derek.
Wow.
The 4 Brady girls. Oh, I'm so happy to get this one. That's the one that Derek sings. Oh, that's Eleanor. That's Allie's daughter, mother. And that's Billy. That's Terry. And this is me. This is Mama. And that's Henry. My daddy had this farm, and he had a mill on it, and they had steamboats that came up and down the river, and he sold the lumber. He carried it off down to Newport and sold the lumber. And when I was 2 weeks old, he died. And then when I was 7, well, she married again and married a man with 4. And then they had 2. That was 11 kids. And with Mom and Daddy was 13. Well, we lived on a block at the end of Main Street, clear at the end of Main Street. And from there out was the farm. We had a railroad that ran underneath our place, and then from the railroad was the river. Well, creek, really. Miller's Creek, but it was as big as this. And so we kids had everything in the world to entertain. And we built our own, the boys built a tennis court and a basketball court. We had basketball and tennis court and baseball. So all the town's kids came out to our house. We never got to go visit anybody because we always had company. So the place was full of kids all the time. Our phone rang constantly for the mothers calling to tell their kid to come home. So anyway, we had a lovely place to come up in. We had everything. We had horses to ride. But each one of us had our chores that we had to do before school and after school. Mama ran the show. There was no doubt about it. And her word was law and order, and you never crossed her. But you know, if you did, well, you had to
Is
go
this
to
the first
cellar.
one?
And that's where she whipped us, because we made so much noise. The neighbors had years, they'd come to see what was wrong. So Mama learned to take us in the cellar where they couldn't hear us. So we all did our trip to the cellar.
Yeah.
And so it got down to where everybody was scared to say anything about the other one, because she didn't whip one that was to blame. She whipped us all to get the right one. So that way, that kept us in line better. She was pretty smart, because she knew we dreaded that cellar. So, okay, Mama was the ruler of the roost. The older girl helped in the kitchen, and Terry and I washed dishes. I've got a scar on my finger to prove. I hit Terry and I missed her, and I hit a glass door and ran a piece of glass through that finger. Came out over here. So anyway, we had, and my job, big job, was milking. And I had to milk 9 cows every morning before I went to school. And then in the evening, I had to go get them out of the pasture. Had to wait for the train to pass before I could let them out of the pasture to go on up to the bluff to home. And then I had to milk them again. Okay, they stayed in the barn the rest of the night, and then that was to do again. Well, when the train, every day when the train came by, I knew just when it would be coming, so I'd have to wait for it. Well, it got to where every time the train passed by, the conductor threw me some chewing gum. Going to Grandma's, we had a lunch, and we had a certain place we stopped to have our lunch. And Mama would tell us, there's a cemetery up there on the hill. I want you all to go up there and see. There's an old woman up there buried in the cemetery. And you go up there and you say, "What you doing there, old lady?" And she'd say, "Nothing at all." And we were just amazed, so out we'd go to try it out. We go down and try it, and it was nothing. So we go back, we told Mama, she said nothing at all. She said, "That's what I told you," she'd say. So that kept us busy a little while while she got our lunch ready. But anyway, we were on the road to Grandma, and it didn't matter. Everything was wonderful. We got to Grandma's. Well, Grandma was one of the best friends I ever had. She really took me under her wings, and I'd get to go to Grandma's the day school was out. If there was a passing any way, I could go to Grandma's. And she and Uncle Frank would keep me all summer. And I just had a wonderful time with them. They were so good to me. Grandma would always, she just do anything for me. And she had a storm cellar, and I loved that little storm cellar. It was about 2 steps out of the house to the storm cellar. And in the storm cellar, she had shelves, and she had fruit and stuff canned. And every time we had a storm, Well, she'd open up something and let me eat it. During the storm, we had something to eat. So that was a big deal, getting to go to the storm cellar. But Uncle Frank, her brother, she and her brother lived together on the old homestead until they died. And Uncle Frank wouldn't go to the storm cellar. So we'd worry about him being out in the storm. But he'd never go to the storm cellar, but we loved it. So there's a woman that hurried off from home and left her iron on the ironing board. And it started the fire, called the house of fire. Well, that was right close to the school. Well, when the alarm came off, of course, everybody was excited because there was so much wind. But anyway, it started there, and it swept so fast. Shingles from there blew over and would keep landing further out and further out. Pretty soon the whole town was fire. It was awful. Well, they let school out, and I ran and got Paul, my little brother, and I got him, and I pulled him, and we went, tried to get around to get home, and we finally reached home. And Henry had gotten there first, and she had already put the fire out twice. And she went up on the roof, and the boys were pulling water out of the well, and the bucket brigade going to the roof. That's all that saved our house, was Henry up there. And we took a lot of the furniture and put it in the yard. Well, you had to watch that furniture to keep it from burning in the yard. When the shingle would fall, it was burning, just like it was glued. And that fire was awful. It just swept Batesville. It was awful. Henry and Jack had a place in Memphis, so they said they'd give us the place to have a restaurant. And it had been run down to where it didn't have any customers. Well, we had $10 for the cash register when we got there. That's how much money we had. Well, okay. We started out. And if a customer wandered in and ordered something, one of us would be in the back. And whoever waited on him would call an order to the back. He'd run out the back door to the grocery store, 2 doors down, and get the groceries. Come running back and have that fixed in no time. And I would serve that customer. That's how we started. And we opened every can that we opened it from the bottom. And then we'd take that can, wash it out, and put it in the shelves up front where it looked like we had a big stock. We had a good stock of goods. Well, we did that, and we kept on. And they'd come in, they'd ask how business was. Well, it was fine. We just doing fine. We were going to make it. And we were real happy to be there. Well, we kept getting more and more customers. So they kept coming, and we kept running. And so we finally worked up to where we got on. We were doing
because that's what Jay told Lawrence, is that if he gave up.
And later years, I went down there, and so I was a widow,
just think
and I
what
went down
Ellen
there
would think of
and,
him, and that
and lived on the river and farmed. And it was all river bottom land. It's overflow every year. Every inch of land was underwater once a year. So the houses had to be built up out like this. And during an overflow, I was in the heavy current of the river, but I never had it. Only one time did I have it where I was scared it was going to come in. It'd have to come in over the threshold of the door at the front, but it was slapping the bottom of the house, the floor. It was slapped the floor. There, I'd reach out in the night and feel to see if the water was up. And so that was every year I had a flood. And I had 2 cows and 3 horses, 2 big 15 to 1,600 pound team of horses. And I had this saddle mare. And I had 32 brood sows. Well, I had a sawdust pile, so I fenced the sawdust pile. And then I put the hogs up there. And then I had them, and my chickens were in the hay barn, which was above them. And they'd fall out of the hay barn and float down to the fence where the hogs were, and the hogs would eat them. So I lost my chickens that way. Well, during the overflow, the when you had a big overflow, you had to ferry your horses and cows out. And so you'd have to go down the river about 5 miles and wait for your chance to get the ferry boat to come up to your place to get the animals. And then he had to take them back down that river and out Strawberry River to get them out to this man's place that was high. This friend of my father's always kept my animals during the overflow. But one time I tried taking them out without the ferry boat. I couldn't get the ferry boat. So I decided to ride the saddle mare and lead the 2 other horses. And the cows I had to leave on there with the hog. So anyway, we had a slough. And so when you get to that slough, there's no walking. And so I had to go first. I had to go in with the mare. And the owner, and pulling these other 2 horses, had to make them go in. Well, I did that by myself. I had nobody. And I got those 3 horses across that slough swimming. I had 3 horses swimming, and we got through until we got to land. And I took those on out to Lawrence Sloan's, and he nearly died. He said, "You didn't." Well, I said, "How did I get them here?" So anyway, I had a hard time, but I enjoyed my years down there. Were hard, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I really did. Aunt Sue was my grandmother's sister, and she came down here. She married a man from Oklahoma in 1903. The colony came down, and so she had a daughter, a girl that her niece that she had raised from birth because her mother died at birth. And so her sister, Aunt Sue, took her to raise. And so she brought Ellen with her when she came down here. And Ellen came up to visit me in Tennessee when I was in Memphis. And she begged me to come down here. So I decided that I would. So I came on down to see Aunt Sue and Ellen and all of them. And while I was here, Ellen and I came up on the river to see a man every storm that did their legal work. When I saw this river that did it, I told him, if you don't want me to live with you the rest of your life, you'll find me a place on this river. So it didn't take him long. He really got that busy, and that's how then that I got this place. And I bought it, and I went back to Arkansas, and I sold my farm and came back down here. I didn't know a word of Spanish. They didn't know a word of English. But I was 40 years old. I'd get off of work at midnight. I was night supervisor at Mercy Hospital in Brownsville. And I'd start out down here. Well, most of the time I didn't even get a tourist card because they were asleep too. And so when I got to the ferries, I had to wake them up to put me across. If they'd put two ferries together, they wouldn't have needed a ferry. It would have been a bridge. Two of the ferries were just, it was terrible to have them. But you could almost walk across it. I'd be so mad. So anyway, the ferries were there. But the men were so good to me. And they'd say, aren't you afraid?
She's like,
and I'd say, oh, you're good people, you're good to me.
At all. Let me just
so that'd get them.
inform her and
So
make her
they usually wouldn't put me across until someone came.
Yeah.
So he could put two across at the same time. And he
Honestly,
did that
I just,
in order to tell them
I would just,
to
like,
keep
open
up
the
with me
messages and not
and take care
respond
of
to
me.
them.
And there was not any pavement from Matamoros to Victoria. It was all gravel. I had breakdowns in here in Victoria, and I had to have my car pulled into Victoria, and they didn't have parts to it, so I had to go to Brownsville to get parts to bring back down here on the bus. And I left them in Victoria, fixed the car. And then I got a bus down here. And I told him I wanted off at a certain kilometer mark on the road. And so when I got there, it was a Mexico City bus full of people. And when I got there, well, he looked and he said, well, you can't get off here. And I said, why can't I get off? You stopped the bus. I've got to get off. And he said, these are bad people. I said, they're not bad people. They're my friends. And I said, come on, I've got to go. And he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. And he just couldn't understand. Finally, he opened the door, got his flashlight, and came and put the flashlight and helped me over the fence. I had to climb a fence So he helped me get over the fence. And then he went back to the bus. He turned the spotlight on me until I went out of sight. Now that's a bus for you. I didn't have a flashlight, nothing. And it was dark and lightning. And so I couldn't see until it lightened. And then I'd walk as far as I could see when it lightened. And I'd wait for it to lighten again, and I'd go again until I got home. And I held my hands up like that to keep them hitting a tree. I've come in here many a night without a flashlight, and it was dark. And you had cows that'll sleep in the path, and you have to be careful or you run over a cow. And it was a mess. So I had to bulldoze the road in to get to it, to the river over there. And had to get that road in so the teams, most of the supplies that came in from the highway by ox cart. The boys, the men that lived out there on the highway that I bought from had oxen, and so they brought the supplies out. So that's how the materials came over there, was by ox cart. And my engineer was from Monte, and he'd worry about me because I had about 15 boys working, and they took care of me. They had one woman in the bus that cooked. So, and at night, in the evening after they got through work, they'd sit around the campfire and play brisca. It was a card game. So I watched them play brisca till I learned how, so I could play with them. Okay, they'd teach me Spanish, and the engineer wanted me to know Spanish so bad. So okay, I learned Spanish. So I kept hearing the word. I kept hearing that boys say this word, and they'd say it over and over, different times. And I thought, I'm going to learn that because that's beautiful, very musical. Okay, so I asked them what it meant, and they told me it meant sweet potato. Well, okay, I thought, I've got a sweet potato. I'll save that till the engineer's coming, and I'll show him what I've learned. Okay, I boiled that sweet potato and cut it in big slices, and then fried it, dipped it in sugar. You know how you do those. Okay, I had it ready when he came. So when he drove up out there, he came. I went in and got my piece of sweet potato. I came out and I said, muy buena chingel. Well, men fell off the scaffolds and ran in all directions. I mean, there wasn't a man on that place when he got through. He says, no, that's Juanita, no. And nobody ever told me what that meant. And I never did get to find out what chingel meant. But I did find out it wasn't good. They built me a little pole house, and it was just a one, that was the biggest from here to back here. About this, well, it had a cot here, and over here I had a stove, And over here, I had a refrigerator, old kerosene burning refrigerator. And so I lived in that a year while I built the house, built it. Took a whole year to do it. When it's building the house, we had a hurricane, and there's no telling how many people died in that hurricane. But they were just, it was awful. And I didn't know we were gonna have a hurricane until about 15 minutes before it hit. And the boys took ropes and tied my car between two trees. And then we all went down under the bank of the river, under the bank, and held the roots of trees that were showing down there. And we held at those tree roots during the hurricane. And the water then started coming up. Boy, the boys fixed a place, and we put a pump in, but they had just a pipe into the river. It ran in the river, and I didn't like that. So I said, I want a well, drill a well, even if it's by the side of the river. I don't care. There's a bunch of space there. You could dig a well. Well, I said, just dig it. So the boys went to digging, and it was solid rock. It was awful. So we couldn't get anywhere with it. And so I said, well, give me time. I'm going up the house, and I'm going to bake a cake. And I'm going to be gone today. I'll be back later this afternoon. So I went to the house and made my cake. And the boys, I wouldn't tell them what I was going to do. And so I knew they were building a road on that highway going to Jamal, going to O'Copple. They were paving that. So I knew they were using dynamite. So I thought, well, I'll sure see what I can do. So I took this cake and I drove up to where they were working, and I told them I wanted to see the Hetty. And so, as it happened, the Hetty was kin to one of the girls in Jamal. And so he spoke some English. So when I went to him, I said, I have a cake, and I want you to do me a favor. I'll give you the cake, swap it to you for dynamite. He says, a cake? I said, yeah. Come on, I'll show it to you. So I took him to the truck and showed him the cake. He said, how much dynamite do you want? I said, I'm digging a well, and it's solid rock, and I cannot get anywhere with digging a well, with nothing. So he gave me the dynamite, the amount he thought it would take for us to get that well. And he showed me, he gave me the long things that you put on, and then you light it out there so when it comes in. Told me just how to use that dynamite. Well, I was thrilled to death. So I came back over here and showed it to the boys, and I thought they'd die. They never used dynamite, and they were scared to death of it. So anyway, I said, it won't hurt you unless you don't do it right. Well, he had some nephews that lived in Chicago, and they were coming, and they were going to have a mule train up in the mountains for them. They were going on a week's hunt. And so I said, Everett, I want to go. He said, good, come on. And so he says, I'll let you ride Henrietta. That was the mule's name that I got. So the morning the boys came, and the morning that we were to leave, I left them over here, and I went on over there, and I took a pillow with me. Well, they laughed at me about my pillow, big sissy taking her pillow. And I said, that's okay, I'm gonna take my pillow. So I took my pillow, and we started out. We went 9 hours muleback to get from here to La Jolla, the lake up there. It was 9 hours after we left here. On the way up there, the place was just simply gorgeous. Everything was just beautifully green, and the orchids in full bloom. You didn't have underbrush because the sun couldn't get through the canopy. So it was all the trunks of the trees, and then it was just sea for the distance. In the distance, and there you had a soft moss on one side of the trees, and it was just full of ferns and orchids blooming. That was the prettiest ride I ever made in my life. And I don't know anyone I wouldn't recommend the trip to, except it is the hardest trip you ever made because it's a far mule back. Well, I cried. I go through the woods and I think anybody that can ride through here and not believe there's a God in heaven, there's something wrong with. And so I tell Everett, you all go on, please let me come slow. I don't want to rush through this. He said, honey, we've got to get there before dark. I said, this mule knows every step of the way. And just go on and look for me when we get there. Nothing doing. I had to go on. There were places where that Everett made you ride because the mule is more sure-footed than you are. It was just straight down. And he wouldn't let you walk. He says, there's people that makes them dizzy. And he says, you ride that mule, don't get off. So you rode the mule. Oh, my pillow. I could have sold my pillow for a lot of money that day. Everybody wanted to buy my pillow. And I said, just skip it. You made fun of my pillow, now forget it. I'll ride my own pillow. So I didn't let them use my pillow at all. They went up there with sore behinds. Those boys were blistered. Don't you know? But that was a beautiful trip. Beautiful. You can't believe that. It was just beautiful. We'd go hunting at night, And then exploring in the daytime, we went to the cave. We went in the cave. We did everything we wasn't supposed to do. They made corn cribs out of a pole. They had a pole, and they'd start a fence around and curve it up as it went spiral. And it had corn, stacked corn that made it so. And they'd have a landing here, a landing here, and a landing here as you went up. Well, we kids sleeping on the corn on those landings. That's where we slept for a week. And unless you've slept in a corn crib of weevils, you'll never know how much fun it was that week. If in your life you had gone through every kind of hardship there is, and had reverses, and gone through life just one thing after the other, and had a family that were good and bad, and you didn't know one day for the next what was going to happen, then to have this place to come to and sit over there in that chair, and I could sit there and rock, and the moonlight, a full moon is the best cure for anybody. A full moon in a quiet place to relax and think your problems out. And they really fade away when you got that river. It's wonderful. That river has been the most joy and meant the most to my health, I think, than anything else or any medicine I ever took. That river has done it.
95 years have come and gone, and 2,000 miles separates Juanita from the quiet days of her youth on the Arkansas rivers. But one thing has remained the same. There has always been a river in her life, and for us, a lesson for looking at life.
Mm-hmm.